The for loop. Repetition with for loops. So far, when we wanted to perform a task multiple times, we have written redundant code. Example, in this line of command, we will display the line "you are more than who you were" 5 times. And the way we do that is by simply typing also system.out.println 5 times as well, plus the line of text "you are more than who you were." That's how you are going to do that without the use of for loop. Java has a statement called for loop statement that instructs the computer to perform a task many times. In other words, these 5 lines can be simplified using a for loop statement in Java. This is how it will become. So we have the for keyword, and inside of that open and close parenthesis is the line, the code, initialization, condition, and the update or increment or decrement depending on the requirement of the program. So we initialize I as equals to 1, and we evaluate I if it is lesser than or equals to 5. If it is true, it will perform what is inside of that braces, which is system.out.println you are more than who you were. And since this is 5 times 5, meaning it will also be printed 5 times. How to move from 1 to the next value of I? That can be done by the I++, which is the update part of the for loop. We're in from our first value of I is 1, and right after we perform the first condition of I, it will increment by 1. So 1 plus 1, it will become 2. And then perform again the second condition, which is bearing the value of I, which is now 2. So 2 is 2 lesser than or equal to 5, and then it will perform again inside the body of the braces. So since it is 5 here, it follows also that it will be displayed 5 times, or it will repeat 5 times before the 2 lines of line will be printed. You can start over any time. Then you have for loop syntax. So the syntax of for loop, we have first the definition. A Java statement that executes a group of statements repeatedly until a given test fails. So the for loop, the general syntax of for loop is the keyword for and the open and close parenthesis, and the first value separated by the semicolon is the initialization, followed by test or the condition, and it will perform now the statements or block, and then separated by a semicolon is an update. It can be in a form of decrement or increment. So for example here, we have int I equals 1, so that's our initialization separated by a semicolon. We have here the condition. Now our condition is I is lesser than or equal to 10. That's our test, and our last part is the update, which is I++. And every time that the condition is true, it will print now system.out.println my name is San Francisco. So for here, we have lesser than or equal to 10. In other words, this will be displayed 10 times. So let us see it in the Eclipse environment. So this is our example, first example of a for loop wherein it repeat now 5 times the "you are more than who you were" sentence because of our 5 value here, and I will increment to 1 by 1 every update or every true statement of the condition. So our first value of I is 1, and since this is 5, then it will be displayed 5 times. As you could see, we have the "you are more than who you were" repeatedly displayed 5 times. So if you are going to count that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and last line of "you can start over anytime," which is the last 2 line of println is declared, also shows in the console as the content of the command line. The next example is by displaying, and this is an error because it could not recognize the symbol. This time we place now 10. So we initialize I as 1, and we will stop up to the 10th value. In other words, my name is San Francisco will be displayed 10 times because our value of condition here is up to 10. So once I is lesser than or equal to 10, meaning we will go from 1 up to 10 value. Therefore, that's also the number of times that my name is San Francisco will be displayed. Okay, we have, my name is San Francisco displayed 10 times because our last value of the condition here is 10, and therefore it displays now 10 times or 10 lines of my name is San Francisco. Alright, in this example, this is sample number 3, wherein this is an example of for loop over range of integers, wherein we get the squared of the value I up to 6. So since we started with our I as 1 and our last value condition is if I is lesser than or equal to 6, so that means we will travel from 1 up to 6, and that will be 1 to 6, and getting the squared of value 1 to 6. So that means 1 squared of 1, squared of 2, squared of 3, squared of 4, up to 6, squared of 5, and then squared of 6. And how we perform that? We declare first the value of I. This is knowing what's the value of I. And then we get the squared of I. And that is just by simply doing I times I. Although we could also use the math.square and the value of I. But for this simple example of a for loop, we just simply perform I times I, which is getting the squared of the value of I. So let us see the result. We have, as I have mentioned a while ago, that we will get the square of the value of I. And the first value of I is 1. So we have here 1. And that is through the command system.out.println. And we display the value of I, which is 1. We now declared the value squared is, and that's why you have here the word squared is. And then calling now I times I, and the first value of our I is 1. So 1 times 1. That's why we have here 1. Then it will increment. I will increment by 1. So 1 plus 1, that will become now 2. Then 2 is 2 lesser than 6. So 2 is lesser than 6. Then therefore it will perform this line of command again, calling the value of I, which is 2. So this time the value of I is 2. That's why we have here 2 here. And then squared is, so we have squared is. And then the value of our I is 2. So 2 times 2. That's why we have here 4. Then 2 will be incremented by 1 again. So from 2 plus 1, so 2 plus 1, that's 3. So that's the value of our I here is no longer 2, rather 3. So is 3 lesser than or equal to 6? True again. Therefore, it will perform this line and it will call the value of I, which is 3. That's why we have here 3. Squared S, and then calling or performing now 3 times 3. So that's the value of our I, which is 3. And 3 times 3 is 9. That's why we have a value here, 9. Next is 3 will be incremented by 1, will be updated by 1. So 3 plus 1. This time, our value of I is 4 because the last value of I is 3. So 3 plus 1, that is 4. Is 4 lesser than or equal to 6? Another true statement. So therefore, it will perform again this line of command. So that is 4. Our value of I is 4. That's why we have here 4. And perform now squared is. That's why we have here squared is. And perform 4 times 4. That's why we have a value of 16 here. So 4 plus 1. So we have plus 1 of 4 will be 5. Is 5 lesser than 6? That's true again. Therefore, it will perform again this line of command, calling the value of I, which is 5 that this time, and then display the word squared is, and then perform 5 times 5. That's why we have here 25. So from 5, we will increment it again by 1. So 5 plus 1 is 6. So 6 is 6 lesser than or equal to 6. True again. This time it will perform again this line of command, calling the value of I, which is 6. We have here 6. And then display the word squared is, and perform 6 times 6. So 6 times 6 is 36. That's why we have here 36. Now 6 will be added by 1. So 6 plus 1 will be 7. Okay. Is 7 lesser than or equal to 6? That's the time that the statement is false. So since it's already false, then it will exit from the for loop. And the last value displayed is 6. 6 squared is